Hello, my name is Tyler Cox, and I will be discussing gender norms in Brazil, and particularly the effect of soap operas on fertility trends in the country. To give some background about TV in Brazil, education and television viewing rates have diverged over the past several decades. Literacy and years of education are still dismal, whereas TV ownership has reached 80% of households. In addition, television has been used as a political tool to shape attitudes and has also given Brazilians a sense of belonging due to the familiar content of the soap operas, or novellas. The network Rede Globo has a monopoly control over television production in the country and is the fourth biggest commercial network in the world. A typical novella it produces has 60 to 80 million viewers a week, and approximately $125,000 is spent to produce each episode. The familiar context and language also make these shows appealing to Brazilians. In the study Soap Operas and Fertility, Evidence from Brazil, La Ferrara, Chong, and Durrier set out to explore the effects of novellas on fertility choices among females in Brazil, and in particular, the sharp decline in fertility over recent decades. The article uses several econometric regression models and a countrywide data set. The article uses two regression models. The first model uses aggregate level data from the Brazilian census, with the dependent variable as average fertility in a certain area in time, and independent variables such as global network entry into new areas. The second model uses a 5% random sample from the 1991 census and uses individual level data, and includes three regression models. As an example here, the regression table gives the resulting effects of each independent variable on average fertility in area J and time t. Figure 4 shows the declining fertility rates in 6 Brazilian female age groups over the past several decades. The article and regressions included are meant to test the theory that novellas have influenced this trend by portraying stable middle-class families with few children and thus influencing the fertility choices of Brazilian females. Here we can see the apparent negative correlation between global coverage and fertility rates in the country. As network coverage around the country increases, fertility rates decrease accordingly. Thus, the findings of the article are as follows. Women living in areas covered by the network have significantly lower fertility, and this was strongest for women of lower socioeconomic status, those in central and late stages of their fertility cycle, and for women close in age to novella actresses. The particular content of the novellas, as opposed to regular television, is evident in the naming patterns of the children after novella stars. A strength of this article was that it expanded on evidence provided in previous articles with similar findings, such as that of Jensen and Oster. In addition, it discussed the effects of novella content in particular, as opposed to simply the proliferation of television itself. One weakness was that it did not give enough insight into the family dynamics surrounding fertility choices and seemed to pass them off as unconscious individual decisions. I believe that the article could have benefited by perhaps citing social stereotypes, maybe pressure from spouses and parents, etc., and other possible factors that could also be influencing fertility, as opposed to simply just exposure to novellas.
Hello, this is Kelsey, and I am reporting on the gender equality in China. I read a paper, and this paper examines the health status of women in China by reviewing several levels and trends of female mortality at several phases of a woman's life cycle that focuses on infancy, girlhood, childbearing, and old age. The mortality rates of Chinese women and men are compared for the period of 1950 to 1990, as are the comparisons with women in selected other countries. I'm going to show you a few tables that are from the findings from this paper, as well as the conclusions and discussions. Start with the infant mortality rate, or the IMR. Table 1 shows as the official IMR by sex from China's government on the left side, and an adjusted data of the IMR by Bannister on the right side. By comparing these two sets of data, we have three findings. First, Bannister's data reported a higher female IMR than the official rates in all years. Second, Bannister's data indicate that the trend in female infant mortality is upward after 1980, whereas the opposite is not true. Third, Bannister's IMRs on female were all higher than those of males, and the biggest discrepancy reached 33 in 1984. Whereas in the China government data, the female IMR was lower than the male rate in the period of 1975 to 1987. The health consequences caused by gender discrimination can be further explored by examining the 1 to 4 years female mortality rate. The female 1 to 4 years mortality rate in China declined remarkably from 7 per 1,000 in 1957 to 2.48 per 1,000 in 1990. Although the gender gap has narrowed, females aged 1 to 4 years still had higher death rates than males at the same ages for all the selected years listed in the table. Compared with males, China's higher female 1 to 4 years morbidity rates were mainly due to the higher rates at age 1 or 2. In particular, the 1 to 2 years female rates in rural areas were double those in urban areas. Traditionally, females leave home after getting married, and this is still true in most rural families. Compared with boys, daughters therefore may receive less care and education but work longer hours and experience higher risks of mortality. So, Table 3 shows us the maternal mortality rates in the 1990s, and we can see that the mortality rates has been dropping from 94 to 67. It also shows us the leading causes of the maternal deaths in 1989, with the first one, obstetric hemorrhage, which takes more than a third of the total deaths. We have seen several data that shows how the women's life in China has been, and despite the fact that the data shows their life has been increasing, a further focus of maternal care in China should be carried out. Also, we should put extra care on the old woman's life in China because they have been living in a poor life and in the past decades and their life hasn't been improved yet.
Today I'm going to be talking about gender norms and the power of cable television in India. Gender inequality and discrimination against women in India is very noticeable. There are approximately 41 million missing women who have died due to abuse. Increasing amounts of sex-selective abortions have been occurring in India in order to kill female babies. Also, gender inequality is worse in rural areas than in urban. The article that I looked at is titled "The Power of Cable TV, Cable Television and Women's Status in India." It is written by Jensen and Oster and was published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics in 2009. It researches the impact of cable television on women's status in rural India and uses a 3-year individual-level panel dataset. Overall, looking at television in India, 112 million households own a TV. 61% of these households have a cable television. Cable television can impact the way people view each other and their behavior. It increases available information about the rest of the world. In addition, many shows, including soap operas, demonstrate urban-based characters that are educated and often women who are empowered. The data from the paper discusses 2 measures of status: son preference and attitude towards domestic violence. After this, they analyze the effects on household autonomy and fertility. Looking at the effects on women's status with regards to cable access and attitudes towards beating, there has been a large decrease in the average number of situations in which it is considered acceptable to be a woman between 2001 and 2002 for those that get cable in 2002. When looking at cable access and son preference decreases sharply between 2001 and 2002 for villages that get cable in 2002. When observing measures reflective of behavior, there have been large increases in autonomy in villages that add cable. And these changes again coincide closely with the timing of cable introduction. Looking at cable access and pregnancy. For areas that get cable in 2002, there is a decrease between 2001 and 2002. And for those that get cable in 2003, there is a decrease between 2002 and 2003. There is also an impact on education. For those that get cable in 2002, enrollment increases between 2001 and 2002, and then further increases between 2002 and 2003. These findings can potentially help reinforce government policy to introduce television and reduce discrimination towards women. The state of Tamil Nadu already provides free television to millions of households in order to better educate women.
Hi, my name is Paul Nyali, and today I'm going to be presenting about gender norms in Ghana and Nigeria, beginning with Ghana. And so we analyzed a study in which two groups were compared against each other, with the first group being the Econ ethnic group, which is a matrilineal society. And this means that land is not inherited directly through the father, but through male relatives of the mother's side. This is opposed to patrilineal societies in which children inherit land directly through their father, although land mainly goes from the father to the sons. And in both patrilineal and matrilineal societies, women pass down land to their daughters. So the most important approach that was taken in order to answer this question of what is the impact of this policy change on educational attainment and therefore human capital attainment was a regression run using a difference in differences estimator. And the key takeaway is that there's a statistically significant reduction in years of education for male Akan preschool primary age children versus compared to their non-Akan counterparts. And so this leads to the confirmation of the initial hypothesis of those who ran the test, which is that land inheritance can be seen as a viable substitute for education. And this leads to the idea that this can be explained by the idea that matrilineal societies tend to overinvest in education for males relative to patrilineal societies, because in patrilineal societies, sons already have substantial land ownership, but they do not in matrilineal societies. But there is another important takeaway is that there's no statistically significant difference for girls in either patrilineal societies or matrilineal societies from these policy changes. And it's important to take these into account given what we discuss in class, because education is a vital part of human capital, which is a vital part of economic growth. And so we found an important strength from this analysis to be the use of the difference in difference estimator, because this provides a precise estimate. This allows you to see what was actually due to the policy change and not just from general declines in school attendance. And a weakness was that patrilineal groups were bunched together against the Econ as if they're all one and the same, although there might be cultural differences that might make some groups more patrilineal per se than others that we should take into account. And so moving on to Nigeria, we wanted to analyze the nature of male dominance and male roles in the Nigerian family. And so to give some background, the overwhelming majority of ethnic groups within Nigeria could be considered patriarchal, with very clear gender roles of males being breadwinners and females being those who raise the children. And so this raises the question, what implications do gender norms have on households in Nigeria? And so the study that we read produced these results based on the city of Ibadan. Based on population density, there was no difference in the dominance of males in decision making. And when it came to involvement in household activities, women also dominated, regardless of whether the activity was shopping, fetching water, or many others. An ANOVA test was run, which does show that there's intra-urban variation at the 5% significant level among male activities, which actually shows something different from the previous bar graph. And so we found that to be a strength, the fact that different methods were employed to paint the bigger picture. And This relates to what we've been discussing in class because because it alludes to bargaining powers of women relative to men and how this could be problematic. And we found a potential weakness to be the fact that this is just from one city, and so therefore it might not be representative of the entire country of Nigeria. These are our sources. Thank you for listening.